CEO finds abandoned baby in trash alley. DNA test says it's AS, Part 1, greater than. The bitter January rain pounded against the windows of Ethan Matthews' penthouse office, each drop racing down the glass like tears against the Chicago skyline. At 42, the CEO of Vertex Technologies stared at the DNA results in his trembling hands, the clinical paper confirming what seemed impossible. The abandoned newborn he'd discovered 3 weeks ago behind his company's building was, without question, biologically his son. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Ethan's mind flashed back to that night. The memory seared into his consciousness like a brand. He'd been working late, as usual, the only executive still in the building at midnight. The security guard's urgent call had pulled him from financial reports to the service alley behind the sleek corporate headquarters. There, among discarded shipping pallets and rain-soaked cardboard, lay a cardboard box with a newborn baby boy, skin tinged blue from cold, whimpering weakly beneath a thin, dirty blanket. The sound of his office door opening jolted Ethan back to the present. Samantha Rivera, his chief legal counsel and closest confidant at Vertex, entered with the tentative caution of someone approaching a wounded animal. "I'm guessing those results confirmed what you suspected," she said, gesturing to the papers clutched in his hands. Her dark eyes, usually sharp with legal precision, now held only compassion. "It's impossible, Sam," Ethan whispered, his voice hoarse. "I haven't been with anyone who could possibly." He trailed off, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair, disheveled from hours of anxious waiting. "The hospital estimates he's only 2 weeks old." That would mean conception was around. "April last year," Samantha finished quietly, taking a seat across from him. "During your cancer treatment." Ethan nodded, memories of the darkest period of his life flooding back. The aggressive testicular cancer diagnosis, the emergency surgery, the harvesting of his sperm before chemotherapy began, a precaution his doctor had insisted upon despite Ethan's protests that at 41, with no serious relationship, children weren't in his future. "Someone used my stored sample," he said, the reality of it settling like lead in his stomach. "Someone at the fertility clinic must have." He couldn't finish the thought, the violation too profound to articulate. "We need to proceed carefully," Samantha advised, slipping effortlessly into her role as legal counsel. "The baby is still in hospital custody. Child Protective Services will need to be notified of the DNA match. But before that happens, we need to understand how this occurred." Ethan rose from his desk, moving to the wall of windows overlooking the city. Rain continued its relentless assault, mirroring the turbulence of his thoughts. For 3 weeks he'd been haunted by the image of that tiny, abandoned child, so much so that he'd requested the DNA test, a shot in the dark based on nothing more than an inexplicable feeling and the baby's startling blue eyes so similar to his own. "I want to see him," Ethan declared suddenly, turning back to face Samantha. "Not through glass this time. I want to hold him." Samantha's expression softened. "Are you sure that's wise before we untangle the legal situation?" "He's my son, Sam," Ethan replied, the words feeling foreign yet undeniably right on his tongue. "My son who someone deliberately created without my knowledge or consent, then abandoned like trash. I need to see him." 2 hours later, Ethan stood in the neonatal unit of Chicago Memorial Hospital, heart hammering against his ribs as nurse. Wilkins led him into a quiet room where a single bassinet stood beneath soft lighting. The clinical smell of the antiseptic couldn't mask the subtle, indescribable scent that Ethan would soon learn belonged uniquely to newborns. "He's doing much better," Nurse Wilkins explained, her experienced hands adjusting the infant's blanket. "The hypothermia is completely resolved, and he's gained almost a pound since admission. We've been calling him Baby Doe, but—" She hesitated, glancing at Ethan. "Perhaps you'd like to give him a name." Ethan swallowed hard, approaching the bassinet with caution. The baby, his son, lay sleeping, tiny fists curled against his chest, wisps of dark hair framing a face that bore such a striking resemblance to Ethan's own childhood photos that it stole his breath away. "Noah," he whispered, the name surfacing from some deep, previously untapped instinct. "His name is Noah." As if recognizing his name, the baby's eyes fluttered open, revealing irises of such a piercing blue that Ethan felt an electric jolt of connection. Without conscious thought, he reached into the bassinet, his trembling fingers gently stroking the impossibly soft cheek. Noah turned toward the touch, his tiny mouth opening in a perfect O of surprise, before his face crumpled and a surprisingly robust cry filled the room. "He's probably hungry," Nurse Wilkins said, already preparing a bottle. "Would you like to feed him?" Before Ethan could process the question, he found himself seated in a rocking chair, the warm weight of his son cradled awkwardly in arms more accustomed to closing million-dollar deals than holding infants. Nurse Wilkins adjusted his elbow, positioning Noah's head correctly, then handed Ethan the bottle. "Support his head like that. Perfect. Now just touch the nipple to his lips, and he'll do the rest." Sure enough, Noah latched onto the bottle with surprising strength, his eyes fixed on Ethan's face with an intensity that seemed impossible for one so new to the world. As the baby suckled, something profound and irreversible shifted in Ethan's chest, a tectonic realignment of priorities, of identity, of purpose. "I'll give you two some time," Nurse Wilkins said quietly, slipping from the room with the practiced discretion of someone who had witnessed such transformations before. Alone with his son, Ethan found himself speaking, his voice low and uncertain. "I don't know who wanted you so badly they'd steal a piece of me to create you, or why they couldn't keep you after going to such lengths. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Noah continued drinking, unaware of the extraordinary circumstances of his creation or the massive upheaval his existence was causing in Ethan's carefully constructed life. When the bottle was empty, Ethan awkwardly positioned the tiny body against his shoulder as he'd seen done in movies, patting gently until a surprisingly loud burp erupted from the infant. A startled laugh escaped Ethan, the first genuine moment of joy he'd felt since discovering the DNA results. Noah yawned in response, his tiny face scrunching up before relaxing back into sleep, apparently content to slumber against his father's chest. Ethan didn't move, afraid to disturb this fragile peace. Instead, he studied every detail of his son's face, the delicate sweep of dark eyelashes against rounded cheeks, the perfect shell-like ears, the tiny cleft in his chin that was unmistakably inherited from Ethan himself. The quiet moment was interrupted by the vibration of Ethan's phone. Carefully shifting Noah to maintain their connection, he extracted the device from his pocket. Samantha's text message was brief but alarming. "Fertility clinic stonewalling. Records show your samples were accessed in April by employee who no longer works there. Need to meet ASAP." Ethan's jaw tightened as he stared at the message, then back at the sleeping infant in his arms. Someone had deliberately used his genetic material without consent, created a life, then abandoned that life in the most dangerous way possible. The violation was staggering, the cruelty unfathomable. Yet here was Noah, innocent and perfect, entirely dependent on the decisions Ethan would make in the coming days. The thought of this child entering the foster system, of losing the chance to know his son, suddenly seemed like the greatest tragedy Ethan could imagine. When Nurse Wilkins returned, she found the powerful CEO still rocking gently, the sleeping baby secure against his chest, his expression a complex mixture of wonder, determination, and barely contained fury. "I'd like to speak with the hospital social worker," Ethan said quietly, careful not to disturb Noah. "I'm initiating proceedings to take my son home." The following morning, Ethan sat across from Samantha in his home office, Noah asleep in a hastily purchased bassinet nearby. The luxurious penthouse apartment, once a testament to minimalist bachelor elegance, now looked strangely barren, a space designed for impressing business associates rather than nurturing a child. "The fertility clinic is in full panic mode," Samantha reported, sliding a folder across the desk. "They're claiming no knowledge of how this happened, but they've identified the former employee who accessed your samples, Dr. Eliza Morgan, reproductive endocrinologist, resigned suddenly in September and apparently disappeared." Ethan's brow furrowed as he opened the folder, staring at the photograph of a striking woman with auburn hair and a confident smile. "I've never seen her before in my life. That's the strangest part," Samantha continued. "There's no apparent connection between you. No rejected job applications, no crossed paths at charity events, nothing. She was highly respected in her field, published in major medical journals. By all accounts, she was the last person anyone would expect to do something like this." "Then why?" Ethan demanded, his voice rising slightly before he caught himself, glancing at the bassinet where Noah still slept peacefully. "Why would she steal my genetic material, create a child, and then abandon him?" Samantha shook her head. "The clinic is conducting an internal investigation, but given the potential liability, I doubt they'll share much voluntarily. I've filed court orders for all records relating to your stored samples and Dr. Morgan's activities." Ethan leaned back in his chair, the sleepless night evident in the dark circles beneath his eyes. "And Noah? What's happening with CPS?" "They're expediting your case given the DNA confirmation, but there will still be home studies, background checks, parenting classes. It's not impossible, Ethan, but it won't happen overnight. Until then, Noah remains technically in state custody, though the temporary guardianship arrangement allows him to stay with you under supervision." As if on cue, Noah began to stir, small whimpers quickly escalating to insistent cries. Ethan rose immediately, the corporate titan transforming before Samantha's eyes into an anxious, doting father as he lifted the tiny bundle from the bassinet. "Is it feeding time? Or diaper?" he murmured, awkwardly checking the diaper before reaching for the prepared bottle warming in a bowl of hot water nearby. Samantha watched in amazement as her boss, known throughout Chicago business circles for his ruthless efficiency and unwavering focus, fumbled with baby supplies and whispered soothing nonsense to the crying infant. "You know," she said carefully, "no one would blame you if you decided this was too much. The circumstances are extraordinary. There are wonderful adoptive families who know." Ethan's response was immediate and absolute as he settled into armchair with Noah and the bottle. "He's my son, Sam. The how and why don't change that fundamental fact. Someone wanted him badly enough to steal a piece of me, then abandoned him like garbage. I won't abandon him a second time." As Noah quieted, contentedly feeding in his father's arms, Ethan's expression hardened with resolve. "Find her, Sam. Find Dr. Morgan. I want to know why she did this, and I want to ensure she can never do it to anyone else again." Artifact, I've created the first part of your story following the guidelines you provided. The narrative establishes a strong hook describing Ethan Matthews discovering the DNA results, the shocking premise of a CEO finding an abandoned baby that turns out to be his, the unique twist that someone used his stored sperm samples without consent, the beginning of his emotional connection with the baby. Noah, the mystery of who Dr. Eliza Morgan is and why she would do this. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the story? 3 weeks into fatherhood, Ethan had developed a tenuous routine that bore little resemblance to his former life. The penthouse's guest bedroom had been hastily converted into a nursery, the stark white walls now adorned with colorful animal decals installed by his assistant after a panicked late-night call. The living room, once an austere showcase of modern design, was now cluttered with infant paraphernalia, a swing, a playmat, stacks of diapers and bottles in various stages of preparation. Ethan sat at his kitchen island, Noah asleep in. Carrier at his feet, while he reviewed the latest findings from the private investigator he'd hired to supplement Samantha's legal inquiries. The file on Dr. Eliza Morgan grew more perplexing with each new detail. 36 years old, graduated top of her class from Johns Hopkins Medical School, fellowship at Mayo Clinic, recruited to Chicago Fertility Partners 3 years ago as a rising star in reproductive medicine. Unmarried, no children, lived alone. In a luxury apartment in Lincoln Park, by all accounts, she'd been brilliant, dedicated, and utterly professional. Until she wasn't. "What made you snap, doctor?" Ethan murmured, studying her professional headshot. The woman who stared back had intelligent green eyes and a composed smile that revealed nothing of her capacity for the ethical violation she'd committed. His phone vibrated with a text from Samantha. Court records unsealed. "Found something. Coming over now." Ethan glanced at his watch, 9:30 p.m. Whatever Samantha had discovered couldn't wait until morning. He looked down at Noah, still peacefully sleeping despite the constant hum of the city below them. The social worker would be making another unannounced visit soon, and Ethan needed to prove he could manage both his company and his unexpected. Son, sleep, it seemed, was a luxury he could no longer afford. The soft knock at his door came 20 minutes later. Samantha entered, rainwater dripping from her umbrella onto the marble entryway. Her expression was tense as she shrugged off. "Her coat, you found her?" Ethan asked quietly, leading Samantha to the kitchen where they could talk without disturbing Noah. "Not exactly," Samantha replied, extracting the file from her briefcase. "But I found out why she disappeared. Dr. Morgan was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer in August last year." The revelation landed like a physical blow. Ethan sank onto a bar stool, memories of his own cancer diagnosis surging back. The disbelief, the fear, the desperate bargaining with fate. "Is she ... double quotes he couldn't finish the question. "She's alive as far as we know," Samantha continued, spreading documents across the counter. "She left Chicago for treatment MD Anderson in Houston. The last record we have is from 4 months ago. An emergency room visit for complications from chemotherapy." And Ethan stared at the medical records, the clinical terminology so familiar from his own treatment. This doesn't make sense. Why would a doctor with terminal cancer steal a patient's sperm, impregnate herself, then abandon the baby? "That's where it gets complicated," Samantha said, pulling out another document. "This is a petition filed by Dr. Morgan in family court 7 months ago. She was trying to use a stored embryo created with her egg and donor sperm from a previous patient who had since died. The court denied her petition on ethical grounds since the donor hadn't explicitly consented to posthumous reproduction. So, she decided to take matters into her own hands with my sample instead," Ethan concluded, anger flaring. "But why abandon Noah? If she went to these lengths to have a child..." "My theory," Samantha said hesitantly, "she never intended to abandon him. The timing suggests she gave birth while undergoing aggressive treatment. Maybe her condition worsened unexpectedly. Maybe she realized she wouldn't survive to raise him. So, she left him behind my building hoping I'd find him," Ethan finished, the pieces falling into terrible place. "But why not leave a note? Why not approach me directly? Fear of prosecution? Shame? Or maybe her cognitive function was affected by her illness," Samantha suggested. "Cancer treatments can be brutal. Add postpartum recovery to that equation." Ethan's gaze drifted to Noah, still sleeping soundly, blissfully unaware of the desperate circumstances of his creation. Whatever Dr. Morgan's reasoning, she'd created this perfect, innocent life and then been forced to make an unthinkable choice. "We need to find her," Ethan said, his anger giving way to a complex tangle of emotions he couldn't fully identify. "If she's still alive, she needs to explain herself. And Noah deserves to know his mother." The word mother hung in the air between them, strange, and waited. Samantha watched her boss carefully, noting the protective glance he cast toward his sleeping son. If we find her, and if she's still alive, there could be custody implications, she warned gently. The circumstances are extraordinary, but biologically, Noah is her child too. I know, Ethan acknowledged, his jaw tightening. But I need answers, Sam. Noah will need answers someday too. A soft whimper from the carrier signaled the end of their conversation. Ethan moved immediately to Noah, lifting him with a practiced ease that would have been unimaginable a month ago. The baby blinked sleepily, tiny fists rubbing at eyes still unfocused from sleep. "Hey, buddy," Ethan murmured, the tenderness in his voice striking Samantha anew. "Ready for your late-night snack?" As Ethan prepared a bottle one-handed, Samantha gathered her documents. "I'll keep digging." The hospital in Houston might have forwarding information if she continued treatment elsewhere. After Samantha departed, Ethan settled into the oversized armchair that had become his favorite feeding spot, Noah cradled against him. As the baby drank hungrily, Ethan found himself studying his son's features for the 100th time, searching for signs of Eliza Morgan in the tiny face. Were those her lips? The shape of those eyes? What traits beyond the physical might Noah have inherited from the brilliant, desperate woman who had brought him into the world through such extraordinary means? "Your mother must have wanted you." "Very badly," Ethan whispered, stroking Noah's cheek as he drank. "I just wish I understood why she left you the way she did." Noah's only response was to clutch Ethan's finger with surprising strength, an unconscious gesture that never failed to tighten something in Ethan's chest that the following morning brought Ethan's first board meeting since Noah's arrival. He'd been running Vertex remotely, delegating more than he ever had before, but today's agenda required his physical presence. The child care service Samantha had vetted sent a nanny named Maria, a grandmotherly woman whose calm competence somewhat eased Ethan's anxiety about leaving Noah. "We'll be just fine," Maria assured him as he lingered by the door, briefcase in hand, rattling off instructions about bottle temperature and diaper rash cream. "Go, Mr. Matthews. Your son will still be here when you return." The board meeting proceeded efficiently until the final agenda item, a proposed acquisition of a biotech startup developing cancer treatments. As the presentation began, featuring patient testimonials about experimental therapies, Ethan found his attention fracturing, his thoughts returning to Eliza Morgan and her desperate choices. "Ethan, your thoughts on proceeding?" The question from his CFO jerked him back to the present, all eyes around the polished conference table fixed expectantly on him. "What's the timeline for FDA approval?" he asked, buying himself a moment to reorient. 18 to 24 months for the initial application, but their preliminary data is promising, particularly for aggressive reproductive cancers. Something clicked in Ethan's mind. Reproductive cancers, including ovarian? The presenter nodded, looking pleased at the CEO's engagement. Yes, their phase 1 trial showed particular promise for late-stage ovarian cancer patients who haven't responded to standard treatments. Ethan leaned forward, suddenly intensely focused. Is this treatment available now through compassionate use exemptions? The board members exchanged glances, surprised by the specific line of questioning. The presenter consulted her notes. Yes, actually. They have a small compassionate use program for terminal patients who've exhausted other options, currently operating out of their research facility in Seattle. After the meeting, Ethan cornered Samantha in her office, shutting the door behind him. Seattle. We need to check if Dr. Morgan transferred to a hospital there, specifically looking for enrollment in clinical trials for ovarian cancer. Samantha's eyebrows rose as she made the connection. The biotech acquisition target? Ethan nodded, pacing the limited space of her office. It's a long shot, but someone in her position, a doctor with terminal cancer who's already demonstrated she's willing to take extreme measures, would be searching for experimental treatments. Our acquisition target is running one of the few promising trials for her exact condition. I'll make some calls, Samantha promised. But Ethan, even if we find her, are you prepared for what might happen? She could be dying. She could be incompetent to stand trial for what she did. Or she could fight for custody of Noah. I need to know why, Ethan insisted, his expression hardening. Whatever comes after that, we'll handle it. 2 days later, Ethan's theory proved correct. Eliza Morgan had indeed transferred to Seattle Grace Hospital 4 months earlier, seeking enrollment in the experimental treatment program. What Samantha discovered next, however, sent Ethan rushing to book a private flight to Seattle. She's listed her next of kin as Noah Morgan Matthews, Samantha reported over the phone, her voice tight with concern. Ethan, according to her admission paperwork, she believes Noah is with her sister in Portland. She doesn't know he was abandoned. The implications hit Ethan like a physical blow. She thinks someone else has him, someone who doesn't exist. The hospital notes mention occasional confusion as a symptom, Samantha continued carefully. The cancer may have metastasized to her brain, or the stress and hormones from the pregnancy combined with her treatment could have caused postpartum psychosis. Either way, Ethan, she may not be fully aware of what she did. That evening, as Ethan packed a small suitcase for himself and a much larger one for Noah's seemingly endless necessities, he found himself torn between lingering anger and an unexpected sense of pity. The woman he'd been demonizing for weeks, the unethical doctor who'd violated him in the most profound way possible, might herself be a victim of desperate circumstances and altered cognition. Maria agreed to accompany them to Seattle, providing continuity of care for Noah while Ethan confronted the woman who had created their unusual family through such extraordinary means. As the private jet prepared for takeoff the following morning, Ethan gazed down at Noah, securely strapped into a special infant seat, blue eyes wide with curiosity at his new surroundings. "We're going to meet your mother," Ethan said softly, the words still strange on his tongue. "I don't know what we'll find, but whatever happens, you and I are a team now. I promise you that." Noah responded with a toothless smile that made Ethan's heart clench with a fierce protectiveness he'd never experienced before fatherhood. Whatever Eliza Morgan's reasons, whatever her current state, Ethan was determined to protect his son while seeking the answers they both deserved. Seattle greeted them with uncharacteristic sunshine, the city's notorious rain giving way to clear skies that revealed snow-capped mountains in the distance. From the window of his hotel suite, Ethan could see ferries crossing the Sound, tiny white shapes against the dark water. The beauty was lost on him as he prepared for the confrontation ahead. "I've arranged for hospital privileges," Samantha explained, having flown in separately the night before to handle the legal groundwork. "They're aware you're coming, but I kept the details vague, just that you're the biological father of Dr. Morgan's child and need to discuss medical history." Ethan nodded, adjusting his tie for the third time. He'd opted for a charcoal suit, deliberately choosing something less intimidating than his usual power attire. "And her condition?" Samantha's expression tightened. "Not good. The experimental treatment showed initial promise, but she's had complications. She's lucid though, according to her doctor. They've scheduled her treatment for this afternoon, so we have a 2-hour window this morning." Maria appeared. From the second bedroom, Noah freshly changed and dressed in a blue onesie that intensified the color of his eyes. "He's fed and happy," she reported, transferring the baby to Ethan's waiting arms. "Do you want me to come along?" Ethan considered this, looking down at Noah, who was contentedly gumming his own fist. "No, wait here. If things go well, I'll call you to bring him over. I need to assess the situation first." The ride to Seattle Grace Hospital passed in tense silence. Ethan stared out the window of the hired car, rehearsing and discarding opening lines, scenarios, accusations, and questions. How does one address the person who stole your genetic material to create a child? What words could possibly encompass the violation? The anger, the confusion, and now, the fierce love he felt for the resulting child? The hospital's research wing was newer than the main facility, its architecture all glass and light, belying the desperate battles being fought within. Samantha led him through security clearance and up to the 4th floor, where a Dr. Helen Winters was waiting for them at the nurse's station. "Mr. Matthews," she greeted him, her handshake firm and professional. "I understand this is an unusual situation. Dr. Morgan is one of our most dedicated patients. Her insights as both physician and patient have been valuable to our research program." Ethan bristled slightly at the protective tone. "I'm sure she's been a model patient. Has she mentioned her son to you?" "Doctor." Winter's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "She speaks of him often. We were under the impression he was being cared for by family while she undergoes treatment." "There is no family," Ethan stated flatly. "She abandoned him in an alley behind my company's building in Chicago. He nearly died from exposure." The doctor's professional composure cracked, genuine shock registering on her face. "That's not possible. She shows us pictures. She video chats with her sister and Noah several times a week." Samantha stepped forward. "We believe Dr. Morgan may be experiencing delusions, possibly related to her cancer or treatment. Noah has been with his father since he was found 3 weeks ago." Dr. Winters ran a hand through her short gray hair, visibly recalibrating. "I'll need to consult with our psychiatric team before proceeding. This raises serious concerns about her mental state." "I didn't come here for a psychiatric consultation," Ethan said firmly. "I came for answers. My son deserves to know why he was created this way and why he was abandoned." "Your son," Dr. Winters repeated, studying Ethan with new intensity. After a moment, she nodded. "Follow me. But I should warn you, Mr. Matthews, whatever you imagine Dr. Morgan to be, the reality may surprise you. She's a brilliant physician who's fighting desperately to survive. If what you're saying is true, there's clearly a significant psychiatric component to her condition that we've missed." They were led to a small consultation room rather than a patient room, neutral territory. Dr. Winters left them to inform Eliza of her visitors, promising to return shortly. "Remember," Samantha cautioned once they were alone, "our primary goal is information gathering. No accusations, no threats. If she's as ill as they suggest, she may not be fully responsible for her actions." Ethan paced the small room, nervous energy radiating from him. "She was cognizant enough to access my samples, create a pregnancy, carry to term, and deliver a healthy baby. That suggests a level of functioning that..." The door opened, cutting him off mid-sentence. Dr. Winters entered first, followed by a woman in a wheelchair. Eliza Morgan was a shadow of the confident professional from the photographs. Her once vibrant auburn hair had thinned dramatically, covered partially by a patterned scarf. Her face was gaunt, cheekbones sharp beneath pale skin, but her green eyes remained alert and intelligent. She wore a hospital gown beneath a blue robe, an IV port visible in her left arm. Despite her obvious frailty, she sat straight in the wheelchair, maintaining a dignity that Ethan couldn't help but respect. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Eliza studied Ethan with an intensity that made him feel X-rayed, cataloged, assessed. "You found him," she finally said, her voice stronger than her appearance suggested. "I knew you would." The simple statement, delivered with such certainty, momentarily robbed Ethan of his prepared responses. "You knew?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You have a reputation for thoroughness, Mr. Matthews, and the resemblance is undeniable. Noah has your eyes." The casual mention of his son's name jolted Ethan. "You named him Noah." "After my grandfather," Eliza confirmed, her gaze unwavering. "I left his birth certificate blank so you could choose, but in my mind he was always Noah." Ethan struggled to reconcile this calm, rational-sounding woman with the desperate actions she'd taken. You abandoned our son in an alley in January. He was suffering from hypothermia when I found him. He could have died. A flash of confusion crossed Eliza's face. What? No, that's not. Megan was supposed to bring him to you directly, with a letter explaining everything. There was no Megan, Samantha interjected gently. No letter. Noah was found in a cardboard box behind Vertex Technologies 3 weeks ago. Eliza's hands began to tremble, the first crack in her composed facade. That's not possible. My sister Megan took him when I was transferred here. She promised she'd deliver him to you with the letter I wrote. I've been video chatting with them every day. Dr. Winters exchanged a concerned glance with Samantha. Eliza, you don't have a sister named Megan. Your medical records list no siblings. And your emergency contact was your colleague Dr. Chen until you changed it to list Noah. The color drained further from Eliza's already pale face. But I've seen them, talked to them. Megan sends me pictures of Noah daily. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone on the side table, unlocking it and turning the screen toward them. See? Yesterday's picture. Noah in the blue elephant onesie I bought him before I left Chicago. Ethan stared at the photo in shock. It was indeed Noah, wearing a blue outfit with elephants, but it wasn't the outfit he was wearing today. It was one Ethan had dressed him in 3 days ago. The background was unmistakably Ethan's penthouse. This is from my Instagram, he said hoarsely. A private account I set up to share Noah's pictures with Maria and Samantha. How did you access this? Eliza stared at the phone, then at Ethan, genuine bewilderment in her expression. Instagram? No, Megan texted me these directly. She scrolled through more images, all pictures Ethan recognized as ones he'd taken himself and shared on the private account. Dr. Morgan, Samantha said gently, I think you may have been experiencing some confusion about the arrangements for Noah. There is no evidence of a sister named Megan in your history. Is it possible that your condition or medications have affected your memory? Eliza's breathing quickened, her clinical training visibly battling with the evidence before her. That would mean hallucinations, complex, consistent hallucinations. But I'm not on any medications known to cause that level of psychosis. Unless, she turned to Dr. Winters, the brain MRI last week. Did it show metastasis? Dr. Winters hesitated. There were 3 small lesions in the temporal lobe. We were planning to discuss treatment options this afternoon. Brain tumors, Eliza whispered, medical knowledge overtaking personal shock. Location consistent with complex visual hallucinations and false memories. Her hands clenched around the arms of her wheelchair. I believed I was doing the right thing, protecting Noah while making sure his father would find him. The clinical detachment crumbled suddenly, her face contorting with horror. Oh God. I left my baby in an alley. I left him to die. Ethan moved without thinking, kneeling before her wheelchair. He's alive. He's healthy. I found him in time. Tears spilled down Eliza's hollow cheeks. I would never. You have to believe me. I thought I was ensuring his safety. In my mind, I was watching him every day, seeing him grow. A sob escaped her. But it wasn't real. None of it was real. Dr. Winters moved toward the door. I need to call psychiatry immediately. And we need to adjust your treatment plan, Eliza. Left alone with Eliza and Samantha, Ethan found his prepared accusations dissolving in the face of this new reality. The woman before him wasn't the calculating, unethical doctor he'd imagined, but someone whose brilliant mind had been betrayed by her failing body. Why me? He finally asked, the question that had haunted him for weeks. Of all the samples at the clinic, why choose mine? Eliza wiped her tears with shaking hands. You were my patient. Not directly, I supervised your case. When you were diagnosed with testicular cancer, I was the one who processed your sample storage. I was already sick then, though no one knew. They thought my fatigue was from overwork. She drew a ragged breath. When my own diagnosis came, it was already stage 4. Experimental treatments were my only hope, but they required me to terminate any pregnancy immediately. I'd already been trying for a baby as a single mother. The embryo I'd created with anonymous donor sperm was my last chance at motherhood. But the court wouldn't let you use it, Ethan supplied. Remembering Samantha's research, Eliza nodded. The donor had died unexpectedly, and without explicit consent for posthumous reproduction. The court froze my embryo indefinitely. I appealed, but... She gestured weakly at herself. Time wasn't on my side. So you chose me, Ethan prompted when she fell silent. I reviewed all the stored samples from patients in similar age ranges with similar health histories, she admitted. Yours stood out because of your genetic testing results. No hereditary conditions. Excellent motility, even post-cryopreservation. And she hesitated, and Ethan pressed. And I remembered you. From our consultation, you were kind. Composed, even facing your diagnosis. You made a joke about your sperm being on ice like a good scotch. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. I wanted my child to come from someone with that kind of strength. Silence filled the room after Eliza's confession. Ethan rose from his kneeling position, moving to the window to collect his thoughts. Seattle's skyline blurred before him as he processed the revelation that his genetic material had been selected not randomly, but with deliberate care, even admiration. When I discovered I was pregnant, Eliza continued, her voice steadier now, I told myself it was justified. That I was dying, that this child would be my legacy, that I'd make arrangements to ensure he was cared for. She paused, swallowing. Hard. I had a detailed plan. I would carry him as long as possible while undergoing the gentlest treatments that wouldn't harm him. After delivery, my sister would care for him until I either recovered or didn't. If I didn't survive, she would bring Noah to you with a letter explaining everything, including funds I'd set aside for his care. Except there was no sister, Samantha said gently. Eliza's hand trembled as she pushed back a loose strand of hair. In my mind, there was. The brain is remarkable at creating narratives to protect itself. I must have constructed an elaborate protective delusion as my condition worsened. Her clinical detachment faltered. What kind of mother abandons her newborn in an alley? I couldn't have. The attending physician who delivered Noah, Ethan asked, turning back from the window. Did they notice anything concerning about your mental state? I didn't deliver in a hospital, Eliza admitted. I couldn't risk the questions, the paperwork. I arranged a home birth with a midwife who owed me a professional favor. She didn't know about the ... circumstances of conception. Samantha made a note. We should speak with this midwife. Marian Delacrant, Eliza supplied. But she won't know anything about what happened afterward. She left after ensuring Noah and I were stable. Her expression crumpled. The next thing I clearly remember is being here in Seattle, believing Noah was safe with Megan. Everything between is fragmented. I remember holding him, feeding him. I remember packing his things, writing you a letter. She pressed her palms against her temples. But I also remember daily video calls that couldn't have happened. The mind is so easily deceived when it's desperate to avoid unbearable truth. Dr. Winters returned with a psychiatrist in tow, a composed woman who introduced herself as Dr. Levine. Ethan watched as they conferred quietly near the door, occasionally glancing toward Eliza. I need to ask you something, Ethan said, reclaiming Eliza's attention. If you had been thinking clearly, if the cancer hadn't affected your brain, what would you have done with Noah? Eliza met his gaze directly, a flash of her former strength visible despite her frailty. I would have come to you openly, explained the situation, offered you the choice to be involved or not, with no obligation. That was always the plan before I lost myself. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I never meant to harm him, or you. Dr. Levine approached, her manner both professional and compassionate. "Dr. Morgan, I'd like to speak with you privately about what you're experiencing. Would that be all right?" Eliza nodded, then turned back to Ethan. "Is he here, Noah?" The vulnerability in her question stripped away any remaining anger Ethan might have harbored. "He's at my hotel with his nanny. He's healthy, thriving," Ethan assured her. "Could I see him?" "Just once." The request was barely audible. "I understand." "If you refuse." Ethan exchanged glances with Samantha, who gave a slight nod. "I'll have Maria bring him this afternoon, after you've had time to rest." Relief washed over Eliza's gaunt features. "Thank you." As Dr. Levine wheeled Eliza from the room, Dr. Winters lingered behind. "This is an extraordinary situation. I've never encountered anything quite like it in 20 years of oncology practice." "What happens now?" Ethan asked. "Medically speaking." "Doctor." Winters sighed, removing her glasses to rub the bridge of her nose. "We'll adjust her treatment plan to address the brain metastases, which clearly explain the delusional state she's been experiencing. The prognosis is—" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully, challenging. "Even with aggressive treatment, patients with her combination of advanced ovarian cancer and brain metastases typically have months rather than years." The clinical assessment landed heavily in Ethan's chest. This woman, his son's mother, regardless of the circumstances, was dying. Noah would never know her beyond these strange, fraught encounters. "And legally?" he asked, turning to Samantha once Dr. Winters had departed. "It's complicated," Samantha admitted. "What she did was unquestionably unethical and illegal. However, her compromised mental state due to brain metastases creates significant mitigating factors. No prosecutor would pursue charges against a terminally ill woman who was not in her right mind, especially given the lack of malicious intent." "I don't want to press charges," Ethan said firmly. "That's not why we came." Samantha nodded, unsurprised. "Then we focus on Noah's future. Given her condition, Eliza is in no position to contest your custody. We should, however, formalize your parental rights while addressing her visitation, if that's something you're willing to consider." The question gave Ethan pause. 24 hours ago, he would have rejected any suggestion of Eliza Morgan having a place in Noah's life. Now faced with the reality of her condition and the desperation that had driven her actions, the situation appeared in a different light. "She's his mother," Ethan said finally. "However it happened, she created him, carried him, gave birth to him. If she has only months left—" He didn't finish the thought, the weight of the decision pressing on him. Back at the hotel, Ethan briefed Maria on the situation while Noah napped peacefully, unaware of the morning's revelations. Maria, with the wisdom of her years, listened without judgment. "The poor woman," she said when Ethan finished explaining. "To want a child so badly, to go to such lengths, and then to lose her mind along with her health." She stroked Noah's wispy hair as he slept. "Whatever she did, this little one deserves to know his mama, even if only for a short time." The afternoon found them back at the hospital, Noah dressed in his best outfit, alert and curious in Ethan's arms. They'd been directed to a small garden courtyard in the center of the research wing, a more comfortable setting than the sterile consultation room. Eliza was already there, her wheelchair positioned near a flowering cherry tree. She'd changed into street clothes, a simple blue dress that hung loosely on her thin frame, and applied a touch of makeup that couldn't quite disguise her pallor, but restored some of her dignity. When she saw Ethan enter with Noah, her entire being seemed to light from within. "You came," she breathed, eyes fixed on Noah, who was studying her with unabashed curiosity. "We did," Ethan confirmed, approaching slowly. Dr. Levine thought a calm outdoor setting would be best. Eliza nodded, unable to tear her gaze from the baby. "He's grown so much in 3 weeks. He looks healthy." "He is," Ethan assured her. "Growing fast, eating well, sleeping ... occasionally. The small joke earned a ghost of a smile. May I? Eliza extended her arms tentatively. The question unfinished but clear. Ethan hesitated only briefly before placing Noah in her waiting arms, adjusting her hold to support the baby's head. Noah squirmed at first, uncertain about this new person, then settled as Eliza spoke to him softly. "Hello, Noah," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. "I'm your mother. I'm so sorry for what happened, but I'm so glad you're safe now." She traced his features with a gentle finger, memorizing the curve of his cheek, the shape of his nose, the arch of his brows. "You have your father's eyes, but I think that's my chin, don't you?" She glanced up at Ethan, seeking confirmation. "I noticed that too," he acknowledged, settling into a nearby chair to give them space while remaining close enough to intervene if Noah became distressed. For several minutes, Eliza simply held Noah, whispering to him, breathing in his scent, committing every detail to memory. The baby remained surprisingly content, occasionally reaching to grasp at her necklace or the colorful scarf covering her hair. "I made so many plans for you," Eliza told him, tears sliding unchecked down her cheeks. "I imagined teaching you to read, watching you take your first steps, sending you to your first day of school." She kissed his forehead gently. "I'm sorry I won't be there for those moments, but your father will be. He'll give you everything I couldn't." Ethan felt his own eyes burning, witnessing this bittersweet first and likely last true meeting between mother and child. Whatever Eliza had done, her love for Noah was palpable, radiating from her despite her weakened state. "We should discuss what happens next," Ethan said when Noah began to fuss, ready for his afternoon bottle. He took the baby back, settling him easily against his shoulder in a motion that had become second nature. Eliza wiped her tears, visibly gathering her strength. "Yes, I assume you'll want me to relinquish all parental rights, I understand." "Actually," Ethan replied, surprising himself as much as her, "I was thinking of something different." He reached for the bottle in Noah's diaper bag, testing the temperature against his wrist. Noah deserves to know where he came from, who his mother was. Not just the circumstances of his creation, but the woman herself. Hope flickered across Eliza's face, quickly tempered by realism. "My prognosis doesn't allow for much time to build those memories." "Then we should start now," Ethan said firmly. "I'm staying in Seattle for the week. If your treatment schedule and strength permit, I'd like to bring Noah daily. We can take videos, pictures, record your voice reading stories, create something he can keep." Eliza's composure faltered, fresh tears welling. "You would do that? After what I did?" Ethan considered his answer carefully as he fed Noah, the baby's tiny hands gripping the bottle alongside his own. "What you did was wrong," he said finally. "The violation of using my genetic material without consent that can't be undone or easily forgiven." He met her gaze directly. "But Noah is here now. He's my son, and he's your son too. The how and why of his existence matter less to me, now that ensuring his future includes knowledge of both his parents, even when one of them committed a terrible breach of ethics to create him." Eliza asked softly. "Even then," Ethan confirmed. "Because someday he'll ask questions, and I want to give him honest answers that include your voice, not just mine. I want him to know you fought to live for him, that you loved him enough to ensure he found his way to me when you couldn't care for him yourself." For the first time since they'd met, Eliza smiled fully, a genuine expression that momentarily transformed her gaunt face, offering a glimpse of the vibrant woman she must have been before illness ravaged her. "I don't deserve your compassion, Mr. Matthews." "Ethan," he corrected. "And this isn't about what either of us deserves. It's about what Noah deserves." The week in Seattle stretched into 2 as Ethan rearranged his schedule, conducting Vertex business remotely while prioritizing Noah's daily visits with Eliza. The hospital staff, now familiar with the unusual, situation. Had arranged for a private garden room where mother and son could spend time together without the clinical trappings of the oncology ward intruding on their fifth visit. Ethan arrived to find Eliza seated in a comfortable armchair rather than her wheelchair, her appearance notably improved from their first meeting. Some color had returned to her cheeks, and she'd tied a vibrant emerald scarf around her head that brought out the green of her eyes. "You're looking better," Ethan observed, settling Noah into her waiting arms. The baby now gurgled happily at the sight of her, recognizing Eliza despite their brief acquaintance. "The new radiation protocol is helping with the brain metastases," she explained, nuzzling Noah's cheek. "Dr. Winters says the inflammation is already reducing. My thinking is clearer." "That's good news," Ethan said, genuinely pleased. Eliza's smile faded slightly. "It buys time, not a cure. But I'll take every day I can get with this little guy." She tickled Noah's belly, earning a delighted laugh that echoed through the sunlit room. Over the past 10 days, Ethan had observed their interactions carefully, noting how naturally Eliza adapted to Noah's cues, how her medical knowledge translated into intuitive mothering despite her limited strength. She sang to him, read from picture books they'd purchased together, and told him stories about her childhood in Vermont, all captured on video for Noah's future. Today, however, Eliza seemed to have something specific on her mind. Once Noah was contentedly playing with a soft toy on her lap, she broached the subject that had clearly been weighing on her. "I've been thinking about what happens when I'm gone," she began, her tone deliberately matter-of-fact. "I'd like to establish a trust for Noah from my assets. It's not Vertex Technologies money," she added with a wry smile, "but my parents left me well provided for, and my life insurance policy is substantial." Ethan started to object, but she raised a hand to stop him. "This isn't about suggesting you can't provide for him. It's about ensuring my contribution to his life extends beyond these few weeks. Harvard Medical School isn't getting any cheaper, and if he inherits my aptitude for science..." The thought of Noah following in his mother's medical footsteps, pursuing the career that had meant so much to her, struck Ethan forcefully. It was the first time he'd truly contemplated who his son might become beyond infancy, the traits and talents he might inherit from both his parents. "All right," he conceded, "but only if you'll agree to something in return." Eliza tilted her head questioningly, the gesture reminding Ethan of Noah's own expressions of curiosity. "I want you to record video messages for him. For his future birthdays, graduations, maybe even his wedding someday. Things you'd want to tell him if you were there." Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Emotion flashed across Eliza's face, quickly controlled. "That's a beautiful idea, but hard to contemplate what a 16-year-old Noah might need to hear from a mother he won't remember." "You're a doctor," Ethan reminded her gently. "You understand human development, what questions arise at different ages, what reassurances matter." Noah chose that moment to drop his toy, fussing in frustration. Eliza soothed him automatically, retrieving the stuffed elephant with practiced ease despite her weakness. "You're good with him," Ethan observed. "Like you've been doing this for years, not days." A shadow crossed Eliza's face. "In my delusions I was. Those weeks I don't clearly remember, when he was supposedly with my non-existent sister. In my mind, I was video chatting with him daily, receiving constant updates." She stroked Noah's wispy hair. "The brain created what I desperately wanted, time with my son." The revelation, delivered with clinical detachment masking obvious pain, reminded Ethan forcefully of the tragedy underlying their unconventional family formation. In another reality, one where Eliza had remained healthy, where she'd approached him ethically about co-parenting, things might have been so different. "Did you consider approaching me directly?" Ethan asked, the question that had lingered since their first confrontation. before taking matters into your own hands. Eliza considered the question seriously. I drafted that email a dozen times. Dear Mr. Matthews, you don't know me, but I'm the doctor who processed your sperm sample. I'm dying and would like to use it to have a baby. There was no version that didn't sound deranged. She shook her head ruefully. I convinced myself you'd refuse, that the legal battle would consume what little time I had left. The cancer diagnosis came with significant cognitive impacts before we even knew about the brain metastases, impulsivity, poor judgment, emotional dysregulation. By the time I made the decision, I wasn't thinking clearly, though I believed I was. Noah had begun to doze against her chest, his long eyelashes fluttering as he fought sleep. Eliza adjusted her hold, savoring the weight of him. If I could go back, she whispered, more to the sleeping baby than to Ethan, I would do everything differently. Except for creating you, little one, that I could never regret. The raw honesty in her declaration resonated with Ethan's own complex feelings. Whatever the circumstances of Noah's conception, he too could never regret his son's existence. The tiny being who had transformed his life in just 6 short weeks had become the center of his world, redefining his priorities and opening emotional capacities he hadn't known he possessed. I've arranged for a videographer to come tomorrow, Ethan said, changing the subject to easier territory. Professional equipment for the birthday messages. And I've had legal draw up the paperwork for joint custody. Eliza looked up sharply, surprise evident. Joint custody? But I won't be. It matters for the record, Ethan explained. For Noah. To know years from now that we made decisions together about his future. That you didn't abandon your rights or responsibility. That we chose to be his parents together, despite everything. Tears gathered in Eliza's eyes, but unlike the desperate weeping of their first meeting, these seemed born of gratitude. You're a good man, Ethan Matthews. Better than I had any right to expect. I'm just trying to do right by our son, he replied simply. Our son. The phrase hung between them, a bridge across the chasm of their unusual circumstances. Two people who had never chosen each other, brought together by an unethical act and a terminal diagnosis, now united in their love for the innocent life they'd created. As if sensing he was the topic of conversation, Noah stirred, blinking sleepily up at his mother before turning his gaze to his father. His tiny hand reached out, grasping Ethan's finger with surprising strength while remaining nestled in Eliza's arms, physically connecting his parents in a simple, profound gesture that required no words. Summer arrived in Chicago, bringing humid heat that made the air conditioning in Ethan's penthouse work overtime. In the newly renovated nursery, decorated in soothing greens and blues, 4-month-old Noah lay on his playmat, practicing the rolling technique he'd recently mastered. Nearby, propped against the wall, a framed photograph watched over him, Eliza holding Noah in the Seattle hospital garden, her tired face illuminated with joy despite her obvious illness. That's quite a technique you've got there, champ. Ethan encouraged, kneeling beside his son, who had just executed a perfect roll from back to stomach. Noah responded with a delighted gurgle, drool bubbling from his lips as he worked to push himself up on tiny arms. The doorbell chimed, announcing Samantha's arrival for their weekly update meeting, now held at Ethan's home rather than his office to accommodate Noah's schedule. Ethan scooped up his son, breathing in the powdery scent of his head as they went to answer the door. Look at you, getting so big, Samantha greeted Noah, accepting him into her arms with practiced ease. Over the past months, his legal counsel had become something of an honorary aunt, her initial professional reserve melting in the face of Noah's toothless smiles. Rolling over now, I see. Both directions as of yesterday, Ethan confirmed proudly, leading her into the living room where coffee and files awaited. Maria says he's developing faster than average. Once Noah was settled in his bouncer, happily batting at hanging toys, they turned to business. Samantha opened her laptop, bringing up a video call with Dr. Winters in Seattle. "Ethan, good to see you," the oncologist greeted. "And little Noah, too. My, he's growing quickly. How is she?" Ethan asked directly, dispensing with pleasantries. These weekly updates on Eliza's condition had become a fixture in his life. The three-way calls between himself, Samantha, and Dr. Winters, ensuring medical, legal, and parental perspectives were aligned. Dr. Winters' expression softened with compassion. "Not well, I'm afraid. The experimental treatment bought us some time, and the radiation successfully addressed the brain metastases, but the cancer has spread to her liver. She's been moved to comfort care at her request." Ethan absorbed this news silently, glancing at Noah, who remained blissfully focused on his toys. "Timeline? Weeks, not months," Dr. Winters replied gently. "She's been recording those messages you suggested whenever she has the strength. The hospice staff tell me she completed the one for his 5th birthday yesterday." Something tightened in Ethan's chest. 5th birthday. Eliza was forcing herself through pain and exhaustion to speak to a 5-year-old Noah she would never see, preserving pieces of herself for milestones she would miss. The courage in that act humbled him. "I'd like to bring him to see her again," Ethan decided, one last time. Samantha and Dr. Winters exchanged glances through the screen. "She specifically asked that you wouldn't," Dr. Winters explained. "She doesn't want Noah's last memory of her to be ... She hesitated, searching for gentle wording. "How she is now. She prefers you remember the stronger version of her from your Seattle visits." "He's 4 months old," Ethan pointed out, frustration edging his voice. "He won't consciously remember either version." "It's not about his memory," Samantha suggested softly. "It's about her dignity. How she wants to be remembered in the videos and photos he'll see someday." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of surrender. "At least let me come alone then, to say goodbye." Dr. Winters nodded. "I think she'd appreciate that, though she'd never ask." She checked her calendar. "If you can make it this weekend, that would be ideal. She's still having relatively good days, cognitively speaking." After the call ended, Ethan moved to sit on the floor beside Noah's bouncer, watching his son's face light up with recognition and delight. Those expressions of pure joy had become his anchor through the emotional turbulence of the past months, the legal complexities of establishing paternity while honoring Eliza's role, the medical consultations to ensure Noah hadn't inherited any genetic predispositions to cancer, the gradual adaptation to single fatherhood. "I need to go see your mom," he told Noah softly, "to thank her for you." The journey to Seattle felt different this time, heavier with the certainty of finality. Ethan had arranged for Maria to stay with Noah, deciding that Dr. Winters was right. Better for both mother and son if their last direct interaction remained the relatively healthy visits from months prior. The hospice facility was nothing like the clinical hospital setting, where they'd first confronted each other. Located on a quiet, tree-lined street, the Victorian-style house had been converted into a peaceful refuge for terminal patients. Eliza's room overlooked a garden in full summer bloom, sunshine streaming through gauzy curtains that softened the light. She was asleep when he arrived, her body diminished to an almost childlike form beneath the blankets. The vibrant scarf she'd worn to cover her hair loss had been replaced by a simple knitted cap. The disease had progressed visibly, her skin bearing the yellowish tinge of liver failure, her cheekbones sharp beneath translucent skin. Ethan settled quietly in the chair beside her bed, taking in the surroundings, medical equipment discreetly positioned, photographs on the bedside table including several of Noah, and a stack of children's books presumably used for recording stories. "You came," Eliza's voice, though weakened, startled him from his observations. Her eyes opened slowly, still that remarkable shade of green despite the illness that had dulled everything else about her. "Of course I did," he replied, leaning forward to take her fragile hand in his. Though I hear you banned Noah from visiting." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Maternal prerogative. "He should remember me with hair." The weak attempt at humor faded quickly. "How is he?" Ethan pulled out his phone, showing her recent videos of Noah rolling across the living room floor, attempting to crawl, laughing at peekaboo games with Maria. Eliza drank in the images hungrily, her fingers hovering over the screen as if she could touch him through it. "He has your determination," Ethan observed. "Once he decides to reach something, nothing stops him." "Poor you when he's a teenager," Eliza quipped, her voice strengthening briefly with amusement. They sat in comfortable silence after the videos ended, the awkwardness of their early interactions long since replaced by a peculiar intimacy born of their unique circumstances. For all the unethical beginnings, they had forged a genuine connection through their shared love for Noah. "I've finished most of the milestone videos," Eliza said eventually. "First day of school, graduations, learning to drive. There's a separate drive with medical information, my family history, genetic factors to watch for." She paused, gathering strength. The last one was the hardest. His wedding day. Ethan squeezed her hand gently, understanding the magnitude of projecting that far into a future she would never see. "I hope you don't mind," she continued softly, "but I recorded one for you too, for after I'm gone. Things I wanted to say without the audience." She gestured weakly toward the nurse monitoring her vitals from the doorway. "I'll watch it," Ethan promised. "And I'll make sure Noah knows who his mother was. Not just through videos and pictures, but through stories. Real ones, about your brilliance as a doctor, your courage through illness. He'll know the truth, all of it, when he's old enough to understand." Tears gathered in Eliza's eyes. "Even the part where I stole his father's genetic material." "Even that part," Ethan confirmed. "Because without that mistake, there would be no Noah. And despite everything, I can't imagine my world without him now." Eliza's grip on his hand tightened fractionally. "Thank you for finding him in time, for loving him, for allowing me these months to know him." "Thank you for creating him," Ethan responded simply. "Whatever else happened between us, you gave me the greatest gift of my life." The maple trees lining the cemetery path had turned brilliant shades of orange and crimson, their fallen leaves crunching beneath Ethan's feet as he carried Noah toward Eliza's grave. At 7 months old, Noah was alert to the world around him, babbling excitedly at the colorful canopy overhead, unaware of the significance of their monthly pilgrimage. "Here we are, buddy," Ethan murmured, stopping before the simple granite headstone. "Time to visit Mom." The marker was elegant but understated, bearing Eliza's name, her dates, and the inscription she had chosen herself: physician, mother, seeker of second chances. Ethan settled on the small bench he'd had installed beside the grave, positioning Noah on his lap so they faced the stone together. "Your mom would be amazed by how much you've grown," he told Noah, who responded by reaching for the small bouquet of sunflowers Ethan had brought, Eliza's favorite. He'd learned during their time in Seattle. "You're sitting up all by yourself. Now almost crawling. The pediatrician says you're advanced for your age. That's your mother's genes at work, I'm sure." This one-sided conversation had become their ritual since Eliza's passing 8 weeks earlier. Each visit, Ethan shared Noah's latest developments, recent photos, and stories from their daily life. Sometimes he found himself discussing work challenges or parenting questions, as if Eliza might offer her insights from beyond. "We had your 6-month checkup yesterday," Ethan continued, retrieving a teething toy from his pocket when Noah grew restless. "Perfect health, right on track with growth milestones. The doctor was impressed with your fine motor skills, apparently. Not all babies can pick up Cheerios with such precision." A gentle breeze stirred the leaves around them, the October air crisp but not yet winter cold. Chicago's autumn had always been Ethan's favorite season, the city transformed by nature's Artistry before the stark monochrome of winter set in. "We watched your first birthday video last night," he told the headstone, recalling the recording Eliza had created with the professional videographer during their extended stay in Seattle. "You seemed to recognize her voice." Turned toward the screen and stared. He swallowed against the tightness in his throat. She was right to make those. They're going to mean everything to him. Noah bounced impatiently on Ethan's lap, his developing personality already showing signs of the determination Eliza had predicted. At 7 months, he was a study in contradictions, his father's blue eyes and cleft chin, but expressions that sometimes mirrored Eliza's so precisely they took Ethan's breath away. "Samantha says the trust is finalized," Ethan informed the silent stone. "All set up as you wanted, ready for Noah's education and whatever else he might need. I added to it, doubled the amount. Hope you don't mind the collaboration. They're unusual." Co-parenting had extended beyond Eliza's death, Ethan honoring her wishes while integrating his own vision for their son's future. The nursery featured the mural she designed from her hospice bed, a whimsical forest scene populated with animals that had medical names, a subtle nod to her profession. Noah's bedtime routine included recordings of Eliza reading stories, her voice growing progressively weaker across the collection, but her enthusiasm never diminishing. "I watched your message to me last night," Ethan admitted, the words catching slightly. He'd waited nearly 2 months after her death before finding the courage to view the private recording she'd made for him alone. "You were right about the sleep regression at 6 months. Spot on with your prediction that he'd reject green vegetables after loving them initially. Your medical training gave you insights I'm still fumbling to discover." In the video, a visibly failing Eliza had thanked him for his compassion, offered practical advice for Noah's upcoming developmental stages, and made a final request that when Noah was grown, Ethan would ensure he used his talents to help others, whatever path he chose. "The world needs more healers," she'd said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Not necessarily doctors, but people who leave situations better than they found them. I failed at that with you, Ethan, taking what wasn't mine to take. But through Noah, perhaps I can still contribute something meaningful to this broken world." The raw honesty of her statement had affected Ethan deeply. Her acknowledgement of wrongdoing, coupled with hope for redemption through their son. "I think you'd be proud of how we're doing," Ethan told the headstone now, helping Noah stand on wobbling legs, supporting his tiny body as he bounced excitedly. "He's happy, healthy, surrounded by people who love him." A groundskeeper passed nearby, nodding respectfully before continuing his rounds. Ethan had arranged for perpetual care of Eliza's grave, ensuring it would be maintained long after the standard cemetery provisions expired. Another promise kept to a woman he'd never intended to know but whose influence had permanently altered his life's trajectory. "The nanny situation is working well," he continued, updating Eliza on practical matters as if she might be concerned. "Maria comes during business hours, and I've adjusted my schedule to be home for dinner and bedtime. Vertex can survive without me for bath time." The corporate board had been surprisingly supportive of Ethan's transformation from workaholic CEO to devoted single father. Perhaps they recognized that his newfound work-life balance had actually improved his leadership, bringing a humanity to his decision-making that had previously been overshadowed by pure business acumen. Noah began to fuss. The October chill and his interrupted nap schedule combining to signal the end of their visit. Ethan stood, cradling his son against his chest while gathering their small bag of supplies. "We'll come back next month," he promised the silent stone. "By then, he might be crawling properly. I'll bring video." He paused, feeling the familiar mixture of gratitude and grief that characterized these visits. "Rest well, Eliza. We're okay." "He's okay. That's what matters, right?" As they walked back along the leaf-strewn path, Noah's small hand clutched the collar of Ethan's coat, his head heavy with approaching sleep against his father's shoulder. In moments like these, the unconventional circumstances of their family's formation seemed distant and unimportant compared to the simple, profound reality of their bond. The future stretched before them, uncertain but rich with possibility. A journey they would navigate together, carrying Eliza's memory not as a burden but as a gift, complicated yet precious. Daddy, is today when we watch Mommy's special video? Noah asked, his small fingers carefully placing the final candle on his birthday cake, a confection shaped like a dinosaur, meticulously crafted by the bakery to match his current obsession with paleontology. That's right, buddy. 5 candles. For 5 years, Ethan confirmed, marveling at how quickly they'd reached this milestone. Half a decade since that January night when he'd found a newborn abandoned behind his company building. 5 years of single fatherhood, navigating each developmental stage with Eliza's recorded guidance alongside his own instincts. The kitchen of their lakeside home, purchased when Noah was 2, offering more space and a yard for growing exploration, buzzed with the controlled chaos of a child's birthday party aftermath. Samantha was helping Noah's grandmother, Ethan's mother, who had embraced her unexpected grandchild with wholehearted devotion, clean up the remnants of the celebration while a few lingering guests chatted in the living room. 5 had been the age they'd agreed upon, Ethan and Eliza, during those final weeks in Seattle, when Noah would begin to understand the concept of a mother who existed in videos rather than in person. Prior birthdays had featured brief recordings, simple messages of love and birthday wishes. But 5 marked the beginning of the more substantive communications Eliza had prepared, addressing the questions she anticipated would arise as Noah's understanding of family and biology developed, when the kitchen was restored to relative order, and the last guests had departed. Ethan led Noah to the family room where a special shelf held Eliza's recordings, organized by occasion and age. He selected the disc marked 5th birthday, Noah, placed it in the player, and settled beside his son on the couch. "Remember how we talked about your mommy making these videos before she went to heaven?" Ethan asked gently. Noah nodded, his expression serious beneath tousled dark hair that needed a trim. "Because she was very sick, but she wanted to talk to me when I got bigger." "That's right. This one is special because you're 5 now, a whole hand." Ethan held up 5 fingers for emphasis. "And that means you can understand more about your mom and why she isn't here with us." The screen flickered to life, revealing Eliza in the Seattle hospital garden. Despite her illness, she'd made an effort for this recording, wearing a bright blue dress that brought out her eyes, a colorful scarf artfully arranged to disguise her hair loss. The contrast between her frail appearance and her vibrant spirit remained striking even years later. "Happy birthday, Noah." Eliza's voice, warm despite its weakness, filled the room. 5 years old today. "I bet you're so tall now, probably reading books already, maybe riding a bike with training wheels." She smiled directly into the camera. "I wish I could see you blow out your candles, but I'm sending birthday love from the past instead." Noah leaned forward, utterly captivated by this woman who was both stranger and mother. Ethan watched his son's profile, the curve of his cheek and determined set of his jaw so reminiscent of Eliza, it created an ache of recognition. "Now that you're 5, the recording continued, you might be wondering more about why your family looks different from some of your friends. Why you have a wonderful daddy, but your mommy only exists in pictures and videos." Eliza's expression grew more serious, though her smile remained gentle. "The simple truth is that I became very sick before you were born. I knew I wouldn't be able to stay with you, but I wanted you to have the chance to grow up and have an amazing life." "You know what's weird?" Noah said, breaking the contemplative silence. "Even though what happened was messed up, even though Mom never got to raise me, I still feel like I have 2 parents. Like she's been part of my life through all these years." He gestured vaguely toward the house where Eliza's videos were stored. Not just the birthday ones, but the everyday advice ones too. Ethan had nearly forgotten the extensive library of practical recordings Eliza had created during her final months, everything from what to do about bullying to how to talk to girls to when you're feeling overwhelmed with school. Her medical background had informed some, her own life experiences others. She'd created them methodically, preserving her essence in digestible segments for the child she wouldn't live to counsel in person. That was her hope, Ethan said. Not to be forgotten, but to be present in whatever way she could manage. 2. Give you guidance even when she couldn't be here physically. Noah nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. Then, with the quick subject changes typical of his age, "Can we order pizza tonight? I'm starving." Ethan laughed, the emotional weight of their conversation lifting. "Sure, let's give the fish a break today." As they gathered their gear and headed back toward the house, Noah walking slightly ahead with the confidence of familiar territory, Ethan reflected on the remarkable journey they'd shared. From the trauma and ethical complications of Noah's beginnings had emerged something unexpected, a family defined not by conventional structure, but by intentional love, by difficult truths acknowledged rather than hidden, by forgiveness offered. Without erasing accountability. Not for the first time. He sent a silent thought toward Eliza, wherever she might be, you would be proud of him. Of who he's becoming. Of how he understands nuance and complexity at an age when many see only black and white. And perhaps most surprisingly, thank you for this unexpected life, with all its complications and its joys. Despite everything, I wouldn't change it. Hospital corridor gleamed under fluorescent lights, the antiseptic smell triggering memories Ethan had buried for nearly 2 decades. At 59, silver now dominated his once salt and pepper hair, fine lines mapping the journey of years across his face. Beside him walked Noah, 23 and newly graduated from medical school, his white coat still crisp with newness, the embroidered name Dr. Noah Morgan Matthews, a source of quiet pride for them both. "Nervous?" Ethan asked as they approached the pediatric oncology wing where Noah would begin his residency at Chicago Memorial, the same hospital where Ethan had undergone his cancer treatment all those years ago, where samples of his genetic material had been stored, setting in motion the most unexpected chapter of his life. "A little," Noah admitted, adjusting his ID badge. "But mostly excited. Dr. Patterson says I'll be working with some remarkable kids." Ethan nodded, remembering his son at 5, 10, 15, the gradual revelation of his natural aptitude for science coupled with an unusual empathy for suffering, qualities that had made his career choice seem almost inevitable. The trust Eliza had established had more than covered Noah's education, allowing him to graduate without the crushing debt that burdened many of his colleagues. Mom's 5th-year medical school video helped, Noah added, referencing the recording Eliza had made specifically for this milestone. Her advice about maintaining boundaries while still connecting with patients was exactly what I needed to hear before starting. They paused before the double doors leading to the pediatric ward, a natural moment of transition. Noah would continue alone from here, beginning his professional journey in earnest. The young doctor's expression shifted, becoming more solemn. "Dad, there's something I've been wanting to tell you." He guided Ethan to a small waiting area nearby, empty at this early hour. "I requested this rotation specifically. Pediatric oncology?" Ethan clarified. "I assumed that was because of your mother's influence." "Not just that," Noah explained. "I requested Chicago Memorial specifically because I tracked down Dr. Chun, Mom's colleague, the one she listed as her emergency contact before me. She's chief of oncology here now." Surprise registered on Ethan's face. In all these years, they had maintained connections with Dr. Winters from Seattle, and even the midwife who had delivered Noah. But the Chicago chapter of Eliza's life had remained largely unexplored, the fertility clinic scandal having resulted in multiple resignations and restructuring. "What did Dr. Chun tell you?" Ethan asked carefully. She remembered Mom well. Said she was brilliant, dedicated, and that she'd noticed Mom's symptoms months before her official diagnosis, but Eliza had brushed them off, focused on her patients instead of herself. Noah's expression held a complex mixture of pride and regret. Classic doctor behavior, apparently, ignoring your own health while caring for others. Ethan absorbed this new piece of the puzzle, another glimpse into the woman whose actions had forever altered his life. "Did Dr. Chun know about the circumstances of your birth?" Noah shook his head. "Not until I told her." She was shocked, said it was completely out of character for the Eliza she knew. He hesitated, then continued. "She helped me access Mom's research archives here. Did you know she was pioneering fertility preservation techniques for cancer patients? Her focus was on helping people maintain the possibility of biological children, even after aggressive treatments." The irony wasn't lost on Ethan. So her professional work aligned with her personal choices, in a way. "Exactly," Noah confirmed. "Though obviously her methods crossed every ethical boundary. But Dr. Chun helped me understand something important. Mom's research was her life's work. When she received her own terminal diagnosis, the collision between her professional expertise and personal desperation created a perfect storm." Ethan considered this thoughtfully. Understanding context doesn't excuse actions, but it helps make sense of them. "That's what I wanted to tell you," Noah said, his voice dropping slightly. "I'm planning to continue her research, the legitimate parts obviously. There's a fellowship opportunity next year focused on fertility preservation for pediatric cancer patients, kids who might someday want families of their own." The symmetry of this path struck Ethan forcefully. His son, created through such extraordinary circumstances, now dedicating his career to ensuring others had ethical paths to parenthood despite medical challenges. It seemed Eliza's legacy would extend far beyond the videos she'd left behind. "She would be proud," Ethan said simply, "and so am I." Noah smiled, the expression so reminiscent of Eliza's that it still created an echo of recognition even after all these years. "I know it's weird to say, but sometimes I feel like I did get to know her through her videos, her research papers, the stories you told, the colleagues who remembered her. Different pieces that created a whole person, flaws and brilliance." Alike, a nurse appeared at the double doors, calling Noah's name. It was time for his orientation to begin. The young doctor stood, straightening his white coat with a gesture that betrayed a hint of nervousness beneath his confidence. "Your mother once told me that she hoped you would be a healer," Ethan recalled. "Not necessarily a doctor, but someone who left situations better than he found them. I'd say you're fulfilling that hope and then some." Noah embraced his father briefly before turning toward his future. "I'll see you for dinner tonight? Maria's making her famous lasagna to celebrate." "Wouldn't miss it," Ethan promised, watching. As his son, now Dr. Morgan Matthews, walked through the doors into the pediatric ward, left alone in the quiet hospital corridor, Ethan felt the weight of the journey that had brought them here. From that frigid January night when he'd discovered an abandoned newborn behind his company building to this moment of professional beginning, their path had been anything but conventional. He thought of the small box in his home office that contained Eliza's personal effects, her medical school graduation tassel, the emerald scarf she'd worn in Seattle, the journal where she documented her treatment journey and her hopes for the son she wouldn't live to raise. Alongside these items was a sealed envelope marked "For Ethan, when Noah becomes a doctor." One final message he had honored her request to save until this specific milestone. Tonight, after the celebration dinner, he would finally open it. Whatever words Eliza had left for this moment, this culmination of their unusual shared parenthood, he was ready to receive them with the grace and perspective that only time could provide. As he walked toward the hospital exit, Ethan reflected. That life's most profound gifts sometimes arrived in packages never asked for or expected. The violation of his genetic material, being used without consent, had led to the greatest love and purpose he'd ever known. The woman who had committed that violation had, through her videos and letters, become a co-parent across time and beyond death. Their story defied simple categorization, neither villain nor victim, neither conventional nor easily explained. But in its complexity lay its truth, and in its unexpectedness, its beauty. Noah understood this nuance instinctively, carrying forward the best parts of both his parents while charting his own course through the ethical complexities of medicine and humanity. Outside, spring sunshine bathed the hospital entrance in golden light. Ethan paused, turning his face upward for a moment of quiet gratitude for this unexpected life and the remarkable young man now beginning his own chapter of healing. The envelope seal broke with a soft tear, releasing the faint scent of the hospital-grade hand sanitizer Eliza had used daily during her final months. Ethan sat in his home office. The celebration dinner for Noah's first day of residency concluded hours ago. The house quiet save for the gentle ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. He'd waited until this private moment to open her final message marked for Ethan when Noah becomes a doctor. Inside was a single sheet of pale blue stationery. Eliza's handwriting noticeably shakier than in her earlier correspondence, but still legible, still distinctly hers. Dear Ethan, it began. If you're reading this, our son has become Dr. Morgan Matthews. The thought fills me with such pride I can hardly contain it, even as I write these words knowing I won't witness this day. Thank you for guiding him to this moment, for nurturing whatever aptitude for medicine he may have inherited from me, while tempering it with the compassion and integrity that are so fundamentally yours. Ethan paused, taking a sip of the scotch he'd poured for this occasion, the same brand he'd joked about during that long-ago fertility consultation, unaware that his offhand humor would become one of the factors in Eliza's fateful decision. There's something I never told Noah in my videos, something I wanted only you to know, to share with him if and when you deem appropriate. My cancer wasn't entirely unexpected. My mother died of ovarian cancer at 35, her mother at 40. I tested positive for the BRCA gene mutation at 26 and had been monitoring vigilantly since, knowing my odds. What I never anticipated was how swiftly it would progress once detected, how aggressively it would claim territory within my body. The revelation landed heavily. Eliza had known she carried a genetic predisposition to the very disease that would eventually claim her life. This added yet another dimension to her desperate actions, not just a terminal diagnosis, but perhaps the grim fulfillment of a fate she had long anticipated. I had my eggs harvested and frozen at 30, knowing my family history, planning for a future family while still focusing on my career. When the diagnosis came, those preserved eggs represented my only chance at motherhood. The court's decision to deny me use of my own embryo felt like a second death sentence, not just my life ending prematurely, but my genetic line as well. Ethan continued reading, the scotch forgotten as Eliza's final confession unfolded. What I did to you was unforgivable, a violation of every ethical principle I held sacred as a physician. The brain metastases explain my abandonment of Noah, the delusions about my non-existent sister, but they don't excuse the initial taking of your genetic material. That choice was made before the cancer reached my brain, when I was still legally and ethically responsible for my actions. Her honesty, even now, was unflinching. No attempt to minimize or justify, just the raw acknowledgement of her transgression. I've often wondered, in these final days, what would have happened had I simply approached you directly. Would you have considered my request, this stranger asking to use your stored sample to create a child she wouldn't live to raise? The fear of rejection, of legal battles consuming my remaining time, prevented me from taking that ethical path. My cowardice led to my crime. Ethan shook his head slightly, confronting the unanswerable what-if that had occasionally haunted him as well. Would he, the man he was before Noah, have consented to such an extraordinary arrangement? The Ethan of 23 years ago, focused on his company, battling his own cancer diagnosis with no interest in immediate fatherhood, would likely have refused. The cosmic irony wasn't lost on him. Eliza's unethical choice had given him the greatest gift of his life, one he might have rejected had she asked permission. Now, with Noah embarking on his medical career, I have one final request. Please ensure he understands the sacred trust between doctor and patient. The power medical professionals hold is extraordinary: intimate knowledge of bodies and lives, access to the most vulnerable aspects of human existence. The responsibility that accompanies this privilege must never be taken lightly. My failure in this regard is my greatest shame. The letter continued, shifting from confession to a more personal note. I've watched you with Noah through the videos Maria has sent secretly over the years. This revelation startled Ethan. He'd had no idea Maria had maintained any contact with Eliza after her move to hospice care. The tenderness with which you hold him, the patience in teaching him to walk, to read, to understand the world, you are everything I could have hoped for in a father for our son. Your capacity for forgiveness, for finding a path forward through justified anger and violation, humbles me beyond words. Tears blurred Ethan's vision briefly. The knowledge that Eliza had seen glimpses of their life together, had witnessed Noah's early years through Maria's clandestine updates, added yet another layer to their complex story. In closing, I want you to know that while I cannot undo my actions or their impact on your life, I depart this world with profound gratitude for the grace you've shown in raising our son. The man who found an abandoned newborn in an alley and chose compassion over condemnation is precisely the father Noah deserves. The letter ended with a simple closing. With eternal gratitude and respect, Eliza. Ethan carefully folded the letter and returned it to its envelope. Through the window of his office, he could see the moon reflecting on the lake, its light creating a silver path across the dark water. Noah had moved into his own apartment closer to the hospital, but still came home regularly for weekend visits and family dinners, maintaining the close bond they'd cultivated throughout his childhood. Would he share this final message with his son? Perhaps someday, when Noah had established himself in his medical career, when the ethical complexities Eliza described would resonate with his own professional experiences. For now, it remained a private epilogue to a story that had defined 2 decades of Ethan's life, a story of violation transformed into love, of wrongdoing that nonetheless created profound good. He closed his eyes, conjuring the memory of Eliza in that Seattle garden, holding infant Noah with such tender reverence. Despite her weakness, "Thank you," he whispered to the empty room, to the woman long gone whose actions had forever altered his life's trajectory. "For your honesty, for Noah, for everything." The grandfather clock chimed midnight, marking the transition to a new day. Tomorrow, Noah would continue his second day as Dr. Morgan Matthews, embodying the best of both his parents while forging his own path in the profession his mother had both honored and betrayed. The circle felt complete somehow, the story not. Ended but transformed, legacy superseding transgression, healing transcending harm. CEO finds abandoned baby in trash alley. DNA test says IT's his finale, greater than 5 years later. Ethan stood at the back of a hospital conference room, watching with quiet pride as Noah unveiled the Eliza Morgan Center for Ethical Reproductive Medicine. At 28, his son had already distinguished himself in the field, combining his mother's scientific brilliance with a deep commitment to ethical standards that honored the lessons of her complicated legacy. Today we open a center dedicated not just to advancing fertility treatments, Noah addressed the gathered crowd of medical professionals and donors, but to ensuring these technologies serve humanity with dignity, transparency, and respect for autonomy. Cameras flashed as Noah cut the ceremonial ribbon, his confident smile so reminiscent of Eliza's in her medical school graduation photo that Ethan felt a familiar pang of recognition. The center would house both research facilities and an ethics board specifically focused on reproductive technologies, creating protocols to prevent the very boundary violations that had led to Noah's own existence. The most profound lessons often come from our greatest mistakes, Noah continued, unaware that he was echoing sentiments from Eliza's final letter. My mother understood this too late in her own journey, but her story, our family story, can ensure others don't face the same impossible choices or cross the same ethical lines. As applause filled the room, Ethan reflected on the extraordinary journey from that frigid January night behind Vertex Technologies to this moment of transformation. From violation had come healing. From ethical breach, a renewed commitment to protecting boundaries. From abandonment, a legacy of connection that transcended conventional family structures. Life rarely offered simple narratives of heroes and villains, of clear rights and absolute wrongs. Instead, it presented complex tapestries of human choices, made in desperate circumstances, of consequences both devastating and beautiful, of redemption found in unexpected places. Some stories change us forever. This one changed Ethan, changed Noah, and might now change countless others through the center bearing Eliza's name, a final, fitting testament to a brilliant, flawed woman whose greatest mistake and greatest gift were one and the same. If you've been moved by this journey of forgiveness, unconventional family bonds, and finding light in the darkest circumstances, please subscribe to our channel for more stories that explore the complex beauty of human connection. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and join us next week for another tale of lives transformed by unexpected moments that redefine everything.